Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Masters Muscle, episode 39. Once again, we're joined by one of Vin's longtime friends, a true inspiration. We'll learn more about him tonight. And Vin, let me turn over the card to you.
I find it really interesting after what I've gone through with my own shoulder surgeries and having 14 anchors throughout my both shoulders, from rotator cuff surgeries, rupturing both of them. I run into a lot of people over the years that find excuses on not being able to continue their workout journey, if you will. And I remember myself, the first time Billy and I ever met, he was upright and walking, and we were friends. We hung out, we trained, hung out at the cage at the Arnold Classic, and would see him every year, would look forward to seeing Billy every year. Him and his brother would come, and they're just two great guys. And then the next year he was in a wheelchair, and it just blew my mind to hear the story of what happened. But to see this man come back from the horrific injuries and surgeries that he's had, which I'm going to let him tell the story, to be a formidable competitor in adaptive strongman competition. His story is amazing. Mine is nothing. Mine's short to his. And Billy and I always talk about the latest supplements out there and anything we can get our hands on to recover. And we're always like, hey, did you hear this? You hear about that? Oh, I heard about that 2 years ago. I'm like, oh. So, Billy, welcome to Masters Muscle Podcast. When's the first time we met? I think it was at the Arnold, right?
Yeah, it was at the Arnold. I think it was your first year. It wasn't even a cage. It was just Universal Nutrition.
Right.
And it was you and Monica Brandt. And the only reason I met you is because you were standing next to her. And I was 19 at the time, so I wanted to see her.
Yeah, Monica had like a 2-hour wait just to get to her at that time. Yeah. She was so popular. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just Animal Pack. That was it. It was that, and then whatever, Universal Unilever and all the other older stuff that they don't even make anymore.
Right. We're going back a long time. I was there 18 years, and you were coming to the Arnold probably almost every year. You and your brother.
Yeah, I've been going since 2000. 2000 was my first year. Yeah, that was my first year.
Okay.
So yeah, was there events at that time? I'm sorry, was there events at that time? Was there benching or anything? Or is it just kind of a booth and supplements?
No, it was a booth. It was like a circular booth, and you would walk around to the different athletes that they had, which wasn't many. It was a couple of people that, you had Twin Lab back then. That was one of the bigger booths. So it was a different time, a very different time.
Yeah, way different. And I remember, over the years, Billy and I have gotten to know each other, and we've always had a respect for each other in every aspect from training to recovery, supplementation, food, training styles, and any of those modalities that we would talk about with how to get stronger, how to get any edge that we could find in our respective sports. And we'd always run things by each other. And I would always look forward to them. And Billy, why don't you go on and just tell the story of exactly what happened to you, step by step.
Sure. It's not the usual reaction when you see me. I'm usually walking around with a crutch or two crutches, for a walker, for a long time wheelchair. And that all started from food poisoning, which is usually like the shocker for every. Yeah. See, that Sean, that's the exact reaction I get from everyone. Because it's not the typical. Normally, like, especially in the adaptive strongman community, it's usually motorcycle accident, drunk driving accident. Not that they were the ones drinking, but they're the ones who got hit by a drunk driver, military. And there are the people who have the natural born disabilities. But yeah, I say food poisoning and everyone goes, wait, how is that possible? And it's pretty much, I was actually coming home from the Arnold that year. It was 12 years ago. It'll be 12 years ago, March. So I came back from the Arnold, had 2 days off from work because my grandmother-in-law was sick. And I was like, all right, we got to go to the hospital and everything else. So we did that, went out to dinner, ate at a restaurant. And it was a slightly undercooked pork chop, and because it was on the bone. But I'm looking at it, and I'm already halfway through it, and I show my wife, and I'm like, she's like, I don't think you should be eating that. Like, that's fine. It's almost, I ate most of it. It's good. 24 hours later, it was a different, actually it wasn't even 24, but for 24 hours, I got sick out of both ends, and I was really bad. The good part is with my job, I worked at the refinery. You know, everybody's seen The Sopranos, the 2 smokestacks. I worked there. So I worked there. I was working there, and it was really good because we're shift workers. So with shift work, we had multiple days off if we were sick, and we didn't really have to worry about it too much. So I was like, all right, great. I just got off of working like 18 months straight, 12 to 16 hours a day, every day. And I was like, all right, you know what? I got the Arnold, did that, and then got sick. So I'm like, all right, next day I feel great. You know, got sick for 24 hours. That was on a Wednesday. On Thursday, I'm feeling great. I'm like, oh shit, I got the day off. Let me actually try to get some stuff done around the house. And I'm near a toilet in case anything happens. So I'm walking around doing a whole bunch of stuff I didn't get a chance to do. And I'm walking towards the end of the day. It was like 4:30. Walking from one room into the other, I just blacked out. Blacked out and fell forward, cracked the front of my head right on a end table. Wake up, I have this giant egg on my head. You know, there's a little bit of blood, nothing bad, but this huge egg, and I had a splitting headache. You know, my mother was alive at the time, so she was a nurse. My wife came home from work, found me like all, you know, shaved and discombobulated, called my mother. She came out, went to the hospital, severe concussion, like really bad. And they were like, okay, but you know, and I, you know, ran down the issues I was dealing with. And then one of the things that had cropped up over the next couple of days was I started developing migraines. So I was getting halatial migraines. You know, people like, oh, I got a migraine, and I'm seeing them watch it play on their phone. And I'm like, no, I had my migraines when they hit, I'm in the fetal position crying on the floor. Like I can't do anything. You know, that's how much pain I'm in. Yeah. And I would get those frequently. So now I'm going for all these tests, seeing a neurologist, seeing all different kinds of doctors, but I was still mobile. I was still able to drive, you know, but we were trying to figure it out. And that's before the post-concussion syndrome became a real medical thing. I had it.
Wow.
You know, so this was before that was like really a key term where, oh, concussions can last more than, you know, so now here, that was March. I went through that all of April. And, you know, at that point, I started figuring out when I was catching a migraine. So my doctor had given me a new prescription that had come out, and I would take it before I could, when I thought one was coming on. And it would take about 3 to 4 hours, and it would kick in and it'd kind of knock it out, but I'd be knocked out for like the rest of the night. So I'm sitting up one night and I'm like, I think one's coming. Let me take the pill. I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down on the couch for like 20 minutes. All right, let me try to go to bed. If I go to bed, I'll be safe. Nothing, you know, I'll just go to sleep and this will be over. Yeah, I didn't make it to the bed. I barely got up. I stood up and I blacked out again because it hit so hard. Jeez. And I had fallen backwards and hit my suboccipital, which is that round bone part right at the top of your neck, and my C1 right on my coffee table. So with that, I ended up falling over backward. I ended up falling backwards, cracking that, and then I woke up at some point. You know, I can't tell you how long I was out, why I was out, but when I finally realized where I was back on my couch, and my wife had just woken up to go to work. And she finds me sitting there like all slumped over, and I'm like, I can't pick up my head. You know, I'm mumbling and all this other stuff. So now she's like, all right, let me get you to bed. She tries to stand me up. I fall into the wall. Tries to stand me up again. I'm falling onto the couch. Like I can't walk. Like it just gone. Like, so we managed to get me into bed, and now it's like, okay, let's get to the hospital. I went to bed. She called my mother. She came out first thing in the morning. My mother took me to the hospital. Now it's x-rays, CAT scans, another MRI, you know, make sure there's no blood, you know, no blood clots, no bleeds. And they're like, we can't figure this part out. So now comes the long journey. So that was May 5th, and now we start. And then by June 18th, I finally got into start physical therapy. So in the interim, we found out that I had lost the ability to walk. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. Short-term memory was gone. You know, the basic everyday stuff was just done. Like it just didn't exist to me anymore. It was just trying to survive. And by that, I mean, it's like just trying to get up to go to the bathroom by myself was impossible. So and it just progressively got worse. So I needed up to 3 people to help me get up out of a chair because I was so stubborn, and shamble is the best way I could describe it, to the bathroom just to go to the bathroom. So over the course of the next year, so I'm going to fast forward just a hair, but over the course of the next year with physical therapy, we were starting to peel back all the stuff that was wrong. Now, some of the additional things we found out as everything went on was I had BPPV. So, which is just the simple term is in your inner ear, you have 3 canals, right? In each canal, there's crystals. Those crystals are what help keep your balance. So people who deal with vertigo usually have some of those crystals get knocked out. Normally it's one canal, one set of crystals. No, I hit all 6. So I couldn't walk for that. That was one of the reasons I couldn't walk. So I had to go for therapies for that. Another thing is we found out that I had herniated my T7 in my spine, and my L4, L5 had all gotten herniated from when I fell backwards. So
Wow.
yeah, so those were that. Then I had then we found out through more testing that I had damaged my spinal tracts. So spinal tracts, it's not directly the spinal column, but all the little nerves that run up and down, like the little roads that kind of branch out, had kind of like popped like string cheese in different areas. So nothing was a direct damage where you can look at it and go, that's the spot that's damaged. No, most people have spinal cord injuries. You're like, all right, between, you're like your L4 right there, you damaged it or you severed it. Mine just like little pops up and down my entire spine. So come to find out after about a 5-hour test that it had equated to having a stroke is the best way I could describe it. So my longtime therapist, doctor friend of mine, had done the testing. He goes, yeah, it's like you had a stroke, but you didn't. He goes, you just got that messed up. And what he had surmised was when I had the first concussion, I was so dehydrated, my brain had shrunk.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So when I had hit, it had swelled to fill up that space from the dehydration. Now that had started to slowly subside and go back to normal, and the swelling went down and everything else. So I didn't need like what you see in some football players, they put the halo on to like open their skull. The doctor's like, you're lucky you didn't need that, because if it was a normal brain size, you would have needed that to try to reduce the swelling. But because your brain had shrunk so much from being so sick, you had room. He goes, which is very dangerous because it's like a ping pong ball. So my brain was literally bouncing around in my skull when I would get hit. Now, after the first concussion, it wasn't healed. Second one just amplified everything from the first one. So we find out that the spinal tracts were damaged. So it's like I had a stroke, but I didn't. So now we're talking, that was May. So now January of 2013, we were looking, I'm getting all these tests done. He's like, yeah, you lost more than 50% of the strength in the right side of your body. So the only reason that you're able to keep going was because I was already in therapy and I was doing weight training now at this point. So I was able to get back into the gym, which is what I knew. So I'm like, all right, now how can I put these two things together to help me heal faster and to heal better? Like, because I wasn't going to accept where I was, so it was a lot of work to get to that point, because I had also developed, because of the nerve damage in my spine, my right leg, I developed ataxia. Now, ataxia is pretty well known overseas. Over here, it's still very much an unknown disease. It can be hereditary, which is Friedreich's ataxia, which will kill you relatively fast. And then there's acquired ataxia, which is what I have. Now, acquired ataxia means that my nerves don't fire the way I want them to. I can't walk. I have a bunch of other small issues. Sometimes it's swallowing, sometimes it's my vision.
Okay.
So those are other things that had gotten uncovered as we were going through all these steps. Now, mind you, at the time, I was still bad enough that, and I'm going to rewind. So back to like June, July, when I first started going to physical therapy, we found out, or my therapist found out through manual manipulation, that my spinal segments, each vertebrae, was rotating in different directions. So literally from C1 to my coccyx, they would rotate because there was no muscle to keep them in alignment. Right. So you have your spinal erectors, which hold your spine in alignment and to give it stability. Well, because the right side wasn't working all the way, they would rotate. So based on what I was doing, how I was sitting, they would rotate in different directions, causing impingements.
Jeez.
So now so I couldn't really move. I had, I forgot the name. It'll come back to me. But essentially my head was also pinned to my shoulder because all the nerves had fried out or had died out on the one side. So I was pinned. I was like this all the time. So I would have to go for therapy, and they would have to literally use you seen kinesio tape?
Mm-hmm.
They would use that to hold my head upright, to try to
Wow.
keep it in alignment longer. That way the muscles would maybe start to activate and open up all the neural pathways to keep my head up. Because being pinched like that, all your nerves get pinched. A lot of people don't realize that even the most minute of things can affect certain other aspects. And that was one of them. So we found out I had to actually get Botox all across the back of my neck, down my neck under ultrasound to actually open this back up so I could keep my head upright.
Wow.
So I had a fantastic pain management doctor that was like, no pills. We're going to get you on a patch. Because I was on pills for a while because it was excruciating pain. That's all I could say. I was living in pain. I could only lay down. I couldn't sit up for very long. I had to wear sunglasses. That was another thing. I had I forgot the name of it. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Bill. You got a lot of stuff going on. I wouldn't expect you to remember everything.
Oh, I had photophobia. So photophobia is where your eyes, the retinas of your eyes do not close the way they're supposed to, right? So when you go into a dark area, they open up, and when you're in light, they close down. Well, mine just stayed open. So I had to wear sunglasses for everything, 24 hours a day, unless I was sleeping.
Wow.
So even like TV screens, light, doesn't matter. They would just pound into my head and cause headaches. So I was living with headaches all the time. And, it was a long road and a lot of things to get past that, to start to try to figure this stuff out. And without my therapists, Ritu and Jen Laz, at JFK outpatient, oh my God, I can't even, there's so many other ones. There's so many great therapists that I had that got me to this point, because they were always fighting. Because I'm like, well, what if we tried this? It's sort of like what me and Vinny do. It's like, hey, did you try this? Did you try that? So I would come back at my therapist and go, hey, what if I tried this? What if I did this exercise? Do you think it would help? Do you think if I tried doing this, this would help? And it was always a back and forth, which was great, because the open dialogue helped uncover things that worked and some things that didn't work. And they were able to apply it. So I think I retired 3 doctors. I helped 4 medical students actually write their papers, because they would sit there and they would be in on my therapy sessions and going, how are you still alive? And I said, well, it's simple. My doctor gave me 3 options. It was quadriplegic, paraplegic, or dead. I took option 4. So they're like, yeah, we're just going to have to figure this out as we go. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to uncover everything, because everything was hidden by something else or obscured slightly. Because it's like, oh, well, you can't do this. Well, why can't you do that? Well, it's this and this, and it was constantly like the little line graphs trying to figure out where everything went. So we were doing that, and that got me, I was in a wheelchair for about 4.5 years, 5 years, almost full time, with very limited mobility. And then I got to a walker for shorter distances. And then eventually it was like longer distances. And then eventually, it took me about 9 years before I was able to get on crutches. So I can use a Lofstrand crutch, which is, the little forearm crutches. And it was 2 of those for distance, which is still the case today. But most of the time I could get around with 1.
Now, during the entire time, when did you start to get into the gym and thinking of competing?
1 year from the day I started physical therapy. So the gym, I was able to actually go back to Diamond Gym. Dwayne was fantastic, as always, the owner of Diamond Gym. And they actually had a ramp, because Greg, the guy that runs the front desk, Uncle Greg, he had a competitor at one point for professional wheelchair bodybuilding. So they had a ramp for the gym. So at the time I was, when I first started going back, I'd get wheeled in, they would pull out the ramp, I would get wheeled in, and I was able to get to certain machines at the gym. So that was the first. It was competing and doing anything of that sort was like not even a dream. It was just like, let's see if I could start to walk. Let's see, if I could get stronger, if I could sit up on my own, if I can start to remember things, And luckily, I've been training since I was 13. I was 12 years old when I got my first gym membership at Chuck Waldron's gym down on 8th Street in Bayonne.
Mm-hmm.
So Chuck would be in there looking like Wolverine, 6 foot, 280 pounds, just full of hair and muscle. And it's like, oh, yeah, this is where I want to be. As a 13-year-old kid trying to get on the football team. And I'm like, yeah, let me do this. And I had some great bodybuilders that were there that kind of got me going and started teaching me everything. So I was able to fall back on that to actually like go, okay, well, if I'm trying to rebuild my left side or my right side, what can I do? And I mean, I remember getting in there. Being in Diamond Gym is intimidating for most people, and here I am in a wheelchair doing pull downs with 15 pounds. It's like that. I'm not used to that. I'm like, okay, you want to talk about a humbling experience? Walk in there and just have like the first pin on a plate and just be like, okay, I'm going to do my 10 reps because that's all I can do.
Yeah, but I bet you that you were inspiring a lot of guys in there. You weren't complaining. And I remember when we first talked, you never complained. It was just huge inspiration.
Thank you. And you know what is it at this point? What am I going to complain about? It's like I'm still alive. I can still do stuff. Let's see what I can do. So it's that progressed. And then it was around 2016, my mother passed from cancer. So after that, I was kind of lost for a little bit, trying to get that back together, trying to keep my father's mental health together, kind of pick up the pieces a little bit with my brother. And it was about December of 2016 that a little post popped up on my feed from one of my friends. It says, hey, the Arnold Strongman, first time ever disabled. I'm like, hey, I'm in a wheelchair. I could do that, can't I? And I just signed up. I had no real training other than just going to the gym, like 2 or 3 days a week, plus my regular physical therapy. I'm like, I'm going to try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing's going to move, or I'm going to do really good. And I ended up falling in love with it. So Adaptive Strongman was, a bunch of guys from England at the time were the ones that were running it. Not the best of communicators, but the idea, we had Magnus Magnuson, who's still in charge of Disabled Strongman. He's a good friend of mine now, and he was the one head referee. He was the one who was running the show pretty much. And it was a very interesting experience, especially being at the Arnold. So it's like most people compete locally or they compete somewhere small. Now here I am on the first, my first comp ever. I'm going to be on at the Arnold floor doing something.
Billy, if I can ask you a question, during this time, I'm not really hearing like depression. I hear but it sounds like though. I mean, what kept you motivated? Because a lot of people would say that's screw it, but I keep hearing like I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this.
Yeah. I'm not going to paint the picture that depression wasn't there. Oh, it very much is. When you can't read, like I'm an avid reader. I love gathering information, and like Greg, he labeled me an autodidact, which is a self-teacher. So, and that's what it is. I love to teach, and when I can't read, it was a killer. And then it's like, oh, you can't read. Well, can you watch TV? No, not without sunglasses. Not at a certain volume. And then, so I was trying to always find something to keep me going and to try to push me forward and like something, but depression was really bad at some points. I mean, when I tell you really bad, I'm talking about there was a gun in my hand at some points with a single bullet in it because it was just that bad. But then, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm better than this. I can do more than this. There's got to be a way out. So I went and I actually got help. I saw a psychiatrist. I was, heavily medicated for a while because I needed to be. It's not, and we talked about it frankly, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to be on this for the rest of my life. He goes, well, you have to see progress. You have to keep trying to push forward. You have to keep trying to find something that's going to be a little bit more of a light than what you're looking at. He goes, yeah, it's a dark tunnel. You're in a pit, but all pits were dug down once, but you could dig yourself back out. So that's kind of the approach I took, was like, no, I can't leave people in that kind of a mess. Like, and it's weird, but when you go in that deep of a depression, in my head, they always say, oh, you figured out ways how to do it. I was also thinking about ways and where I could do it so the cleanup would be as minimal as possible, or as least impactful to somebody, my wife or my brother, my father, whoever it was be. But I'm like, that's not fair to them. Yeah, it's the easy way out for me, but I'm better than that. I know I'm made of tougher stuff. I'm a blue collar guy. There's no reason that, all right, just shrug it off and move on. Yeah. So it took a lot. It took a lot, but yeah, it's you have to learn how to try to turn it around, and it's really hard to do. I'm not saying that everybody can, but I think everybody has the ability to try to get past dark areas. You just have to find that light. Yeah, you have to find the lighthouse to look at and go, okay, that's the light. That's where I got to go, and not necessarily just sit there in the dark the whole time.
I don't know if you experienced it, but like when I was going through my surgeries, and then made a comeback and competed and had some success in the Masters, people would say, oh, but that's you. That came easy for you. Did you have people say to you, oh, Billy, I can't do what you did. That came easy for you. And I think people misunderstand having a strong mindset. And it's great to hear. Not only did you overcome, or not overcome, but you've mentally adapted to what you're doing, but you're man enough to say, I had a gun in my hand and I was thinking of how I could do this so it would be minimal for anyone to clean up the mess. I mean, that's strong. That's deep. And I'm sure there's people out there that have thought the situation they're in, there's no way out. And I think a lot of people, their biggest fear is being able to be healthy and walk and then be in a wheelchair. And then you experienced both. You went healthy to a wheelchair. You got yourself out of the wheelchair. You fought depression. And, my hat's off to you, man. God bless you.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's, I try to push it. It's like, I'm always trying to push it forward where it's like, it can suck. It's going to suck. Nobody's life is perfect. I don't care what you see on TV or social media. It doesn't exist that way. But I will sit there and I will talk to anybody for any length of time if they need it. I had a friend of mine, John, who I competed with, he lost both of his legs in Afghanistan, because he had a new CO that came over right out of, fresh out of school, like, oh yeah, my first time. And he's on his second or third tour, and they're trying to tell him, don't walk the same path. You can't walk the same path in Afghanistan because they'll watch you and they'll plant bombs right on the path you're walking. And that's exactly what happened. They all told him, don't do it, don't do it. CO's like, no, I'm in charge. Go down this way. He lost both of his legs. He lost a bunch of friends, and he fought through all of that, and he came back and he was competing side by side with me. And to this day, he's still a fantastic man, but he went through a similar scenario. But in a way, it was, he was having trouble at home with his wife. I don't know the extent of it, but he was in a similar situation where he thought there was no way out. And he was lucky enough to have that friend that was able to pull him out of that, and tell him there's more. That's just a relationship. Yeah, it's going to hurt. Yes, it's going to sting. It's going to suck. But you still have life to live. There's no reason. It's like you survived being blown up in a sandbox, and now you're going to take your own life because of your wife or ex-wife now. But and luckily he had somebody that was there to do that for him. And I tried reaching out at the same time, but it's kind of hard when you're states away from each other in some cases. But it's not a normal scenario. But anytime that everything gets taken away, I don't care who you are. You could be like, oh yeah, this is, I'm going to get out of this. When you're in this scenario, when you're knee deep in it or waist deep, trust me, that being able to come up with that, like, yeah, you can do it. It's not always there.
Yeah. So take us through. Okay, so you went to the Arnold Classic. First time. How did you place? How did you do?
Sure. I did. I actually placed third. I tied for third technically on points because it's strongman. But it was eye-opening. The first time they're like, oh, here, pull this sled. It's 700 pounds. I'm like, okay, sure. They put me in a harness and I've never been in a harness. I'm like, I know how to pull a rope. I can pull a rope. I'll pull the sled. But this was the first event. The harness actually slid up and started choking me. So I can't breathe. And I'm like, they're like, you have to pull this weight. And I'm trying to breathe and I can't even breathe. I ended up being purple by the end, falling backwards by the time I was done. And they just started laughing. I'm like, I hate the harness. I can't deal with this. But I did that. I did win the dumbbell overhead press event. I did okay on the stones. I think I got like 2 stones because I'd never touched those before. The seated deadlift I had only done like once, which is like, the big penultimate lift, I guess, currently for disabled strongman or adaptive strongman.
Now, I remember seeing you doing that for the very first time, and I was like so baffled on how that exercise, that movement worked. Explain to people what that is.
Sure. Seated deadlift, a lot of people,
break it down like what the regular deadlift is and then go into what you do.
Sure. So regular deadlift, bars on the floor, you have it bars 9 inches off the floor, it's right at your shins, you bend over, you squat down, grab the bar, stand up. You hinge your hips forward and you stand up with the bar. Seated deadlift, because most of us don't have full use or only partial use of 1 or 2 legs, we have a special bench that's about 18 inches off the ground, and the bar sits right underneath our legs. So our legs are over the bar, and we're sitting down, put our hands on it, and we have to essentially just sit up. So the bar is going to hang right below our legs. And it's a challenging exercise, to say the least, because you can use it. I need Magnuson actually took it from us when he got his knees replaced. He goes, I'm still lifting, I don't care. And so he wanted to deadlift, so that's what he was doing, because it takes your legs completely out of it. Your hips, your legs, you don't use them at all other than to stabilize a little bit. We got guys that have 1 or no legs and they still do it.
Wow, that's awesome.
So Billy, I gotta ask, go back one step. Where are you training for this? Because you're not going into Diamond Gym and moving rocks around.
No, I actually fell back on bodybuilding. Like, I trained for my first few competitions doing just bodybuilding stuff, and kind of looking at the event going, like, I knew strongman, I knew all the normal strongman events, but how they were adapted was something I had to learn real quick. And it's not like there was this myriad of YouTube videos on how to do disabled strongman or like websites to sign up for. There was none of that. So I just trained like a bodybuilder. I'm like, all right, overhead press. All right. So they're going to use a circus dumbbell. All right. It's a fat handle, but I'll just put a dumbbell on one side and press it. Seated deadlift was fairly easy. Just jump on a flat bench, have somebody sit on the backside so it doesn't pop up on me. I would do low cable rows to simulate any kind of sled or truck pull. Stones was a little tricky, so I just never actually trained them for a couple of years. I just said, all right, I'm just going to do a lot of twists. I'd grab like a dumbbell and just move it side to side. So I used everything that I had learned from bodybuilding for 20 plus years and just adapted that into being able to go into an exercise. And then I got even better at it because of my situation. And I can break down almost any event for an able-bodied strongman piece by piece and give you individual exercises for a single movement to help, produce a better overall end result. So I've actually proven it with a few guys that have turned pro, a couple of guys that are on the, amateur circuit. Then I'm like, do this. And they're like, but this is machines. This isn't the movement. I'm like, I know, but you're weak in these parts. So let's strengthen those parts up. And then when we go back, it's going to come back. It's going to be even better.
Interesting. Okay. So what are the events then? You have stones, obviously you have pull, and I'm sorry, I'm not the powerlifter, the strongman, but the big, I call it a log. Looks like a log where it's got the handles to push up.
Log press. Yeah.
Log press. Okay. And what else is there?
We have circus dumbbells. So usually it's anywhere from the handles about the thickness of a can.
Okay.
So it's either that big or bigger. So usually they start at about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and they go up to about 3.5 inches. And they're like literally like the big circus bells that go on the shoulder. You see Brian Shaw lifting them all the time. So we usually do that seated. There is different categories in adaptive strongman. So there are standing categories and there are seated categories. So standing typically standing one is guys who have one leg. Typically it's below the knee because that's where they're the most stable because they still have a knee joint. So their prosthetic actually functions more efficiently. And then there's standing two, which is the one arm guys. So we have a friend of mine, James Spurgeon, who go look at one arm power if you want to see some impressive things. He was a U.S. Marine. He got into, I believe it was a motorcycle accident that was not military related. And he had a brachial plexus injury. So the nerve that runs from your spine down your arm was severed.
Oh, wow.
So his arm is there, but there's no nerve, no muscle because it just doesn't function like that anymore. So he could do everything with his left hand better than most people can do with two good hands. He's he's a phenom with what he can do. He's loaded a 400-pound stone. Right now, 400-pound stone is about what Brian Shaw and Eddie Hall can lift. And this guy can do it with one arm and a strap.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I'm in seated one, which is more or less like the open category. So we can't stand on our own without support or the ability to stand on our own unsupported or move. And seated two is for guys who have like spina bifida, who have cerebral palsy, other neurological conditions that don't let them fully use all of their faculties as far as strength goes. So they have a same events. We all do the same events, but they're just modified and adapted based on what category you're in.
But there's no weight classes or anything within those categories. It's just
not currently. There's just not enough. There's just not enough people worldwide yet to break it down further. So, like currently, I think I'm competing. The guys that I compete against, I give up about 35 pounds because I dropped a bunch of weight just to be healthier. But they all average around 270 to 300. There's a couple of guys that are even north of that. But I was up there for a while when I first started. But that was partially due to antidepressants, partially not being able to move as much. So I had ballooned up. I was close to 300 pounds when I first started. And then I slowly started, chipping away at that to just be healthier overall because I can't do this forever.
No, what do you do now?
Sorry, Finn, go ahead.
253.
So do you still hold world records now?
I have 5 world records, one of which is kind of semi-contested because of the competition was held in, but I have the log record. I have the axle press. So we do press a log, but it's on an incline. Getting back to your question. So yeah, we do the log, but it's on like a slight incline. That way we can actually not smash ourselves in the face, which I've done. But I have a log record. I have the axle world record. I have a circus dumbbell world record. Block press. Pretty much they're all pressing events because I have short arms, so it kind of favors me a little bit compared to some of the other guys.
Wow, that's awesome. Because I did see the one where you with the log press with the incline. I did see that one on one of your videos on YouTube earlier, which is very phenomenal. Yeah,
that was 375 pounds. So that was 375. My axle's 355. Circus I did was 160. Was the heaviest I've ever done on that. The block was actually the lowest at 135, but that was literally like 2 months after me starting to train for Strongman. And I was able to set that record.
Cool. And how many different countries have you been to for all these?
I competed in Norway. I competed in Iceland, Canada, and England. England was 2022. I was out there. For the Arnold UK.
When was
Iceland was 2019.
I remember you guys talking about something about being a Viking or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
So we did Iceland. They made us compete outside, which was interesting because it's Magnus, so Vikings don't care. He's like, you've seen my videos from when I won World's Strongest. They had us up on the waterfall pressing in the cold. He goes, all right, so it's raining. You guys are pressing outside. So yeah, we had to do everything outside. It didn't matter.
That's cool. That's cool.
Oh yeah, it was an experience.
Along the way, we've talked about recovery many, many times.
Oh yeah.
What could you tell? So anyone who's listening that is in a wheelchair, similar to your situation, that wants to take their workouts to the next level, whatever that may be, what could you recommend? What do you advise on how to put together a training program so your central nervous system doesn't get all messed up and you can recover better?
Funny enough, it's time. What I found, like especially over the course of years, is that I couldn't do too much at once. Like the mind is willing, but the body's not. Is kind of like what it always ended up being. So I was always trying to. I had to learn how to pace out my workouts. So it's like I was going to therapy 3 times a week, physical therapy for like an hour at a clip, and then I would that was taxing. I would go to the physical therapy. I'd have to sleep for 3 hours. Sleep was like, it was the unsung hero, but it was the one thing I couldn't get because insomnia was another one of the things I was dealing with. So it was like a lot of research into doing that, which ended up being getting a CPAP machine was the greatest thing that I've ever done in my life. So anybody if you think you're not getting enough restful sleep, sometimes it's a lot of times it's diet or supplementation, but if you're snoring, if you wake up and you feel like you're still tired after sleeping for 8 hours or more, go get a sleep test. Like I think that's one of the reasons a lot of the bodybuilders, that die young is that they're not getting they have sleep apnea. When I fast forward a few years, I ended up in the hospital with AFib. Right. So my heart shocked itself awake because I stopped breathing. Went into the hospital emergency room. Doctor my respirologist looked at me. He goes, how big is your neck? And I was like 21 inches. He goes, you have sleep apnea. I'm putting you on a machine. Didn't do anything else. No other testing. Most people can't sleep in a hospital. He put that machine on me. I was the best sleep I had in years. Absolutely the greatest sleep I've ever had. And this is every 2 hours, they're sticking me to pull more blood. I was sleeping through them pulling blood. The phlebotomists are like, you're the only person to ever sleep through and getting blood drawn out of them. And I'm like, it was great sleep. I didn't want to take that mask off. But what happens is that thickens the blood. Sleep apnea, which I don't know a lot of people don't realize. So what happens is over the course of the night, you stop breathing. You're not breathing in enough, or you stop breathing. And that triggers your body going, oh, we're not getting enough oxygen, which means there's not enough red blood cells. Mm-hmm. Make more red blood cells. So now your body starts hyper producing red blood cells to take up the little bit of oxygen you're getting throughout the night, which in turn thickens your blood. So now you get thicker and thicker blood. And if you don't pay attention to it, you don't know about it, it causes blood clots. It causes, all kinds of nasty things that have dropped a lot of great bodybuilders as far as I'm concerned, and powerlifters, strongmen, all the same thing, because it thickens the blood, their blood pressure goes up, and then that's it.
So I actually heard that, honestly enough, I heard that on a podcast the other day, that the gentleman was saying that James Hollingshead was saying that his hematocrit has gone down. So I'll ask you, Billy, do you use just a nose piece, a full mask, or what do you sleep with?
The one I have just covers my mouth and the bottom of my nose.
Okay.
It's an Amara View. The Amara View. That's the name of the actual mask. I tried a bunch of them, and that was the best one. But I kind of got sidetracked. But getting back to Vinny, sleep is one of the most primary drivers to help recovery. But that and learning how to listen to your body more. So you catch an injury, and a lot of times you're like, oh, I can go do this, I can do that. You have to listen. It takes a little bit, and there is trial and error. But I found out that I could only train 3 days a week. So I was in therapy 3 days. I could train 3 days, but they had to be very varied, as far as intensity goes, because I couldn't recover from everything. I'm still trying to get healed. Now it's a lot different. The tables have turned. So I can actually do more and recover better because I'm more cognizant of it. And my body and my CNS has been trained enough to be able to handle the workload I put it under.
Yeah. I just want to correct myself. It was Mike Van Wyck. I don't want anybody to think James Hollingshead.
Okay.
But Billy, we have a question. People are watching, and we have questions coming in here.
Sure.
What does Billy think of Westside Barbell and Lou Simmons' philosophy? Does that sound something you might recognize?
Yeah.
That's a powerlifting thing. I think Lou Simmons as a whole.
Nope, we lost him for a minute. Ben, do you know what he's talking about? What the gentleman's talking about?
Yes, I do, but I want to hear his. I mean,
It seems like
Louis
he just
Simmons
froze
had
up here.
Louis Simmons had his own way of training. But as a bodybuilder, I don't even come close to the knowledge of those guys. They paved the way of what they did at Westside.
Okay. So hopefully Billy will just join back in here.
Do you
But I
have
was
his number?
I'm sorry?
Do you have his number?
I don't have his number.
Should.
It's okay. Hopefully he'll realize. Hopefully he doesn't realize that.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
No, sorry about that. My computer decided to go crazy on me and say I had to quit something.
That's okay. Vinny
So,
filled in the gap a little bit, but come from you, Billy. What's the Lou Simmons philosophy?
Lou Simmons, he has a belief in dynamic. I forgot if it's like a speed day and then like a heavy day is essentially like for the simplest terms of it. I don't think the philosophy works on all accounts. I do think it does have some application. I do love some of the exercises, the variations he's come up with. They have universal appeal. They have a lot of great ideas that are in that philosophy. Do I think it's the all-encompassing? No. I don't think any one system is better than another. I think they're just all different based on what your needs are and what your wants are and what you expect to get out of them.
It's the same thing with bodybuilding. When I say to people, they ask me what kind of workout is the best workout, and I'm like, every one of them.
Yeah.
Well, what's the worst? Every one of them, because eventually they don't work anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to change. You have to adapt, and you have to change your workouts. You have to change your workout schedule, and just like what you're talking about, you got to figure out how long does it take you to recover.
Yeah, because some of them are going to be, like I have some of my nephews, or two of my nephews, like I have them on a really heavy day, and then they have like a semi lighter day, and then it's another heavy day or an event day. So it is broken up, and it's again, I take a lot of the stuff from Westside, not to heart as far as the breakout goes, but I do think that there's a lot of great ideas and philosophies within the system that can be utilized in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, and if there's anybody who wants to watch a great documentary, it's Westside versus the World.
Yes.
And, you'll see in that documentary stuff being done back in the 80s that people think were developed 5 years ago, right? So, like, you see, like, the reverse hyper, he invented it off of basically a bench, a workbench, and so many other apparatuses that were developed there and exercises that in Westside versus the World, you get to see some serious hardcore training.
How old's the video, Vin? Would you think?
It's been out a while. Yeah, they made it a long time ago, but it's Westside versus the World. Best documentary on just hardcore weight training, just moving weight. And yeah, you never seen it?
I haven't seen it. I'll have to look it up. Make sure when I get offline here with you, look it up later.
Okay. You gotta invest the time to watch that, and then you'll see what people do in the gym today and go, you'll be back on.
Yeah, I'll get in here. Oh, well, I'll see when he pops on here. So, Vin, have you looked at the schedule this year? You thinking of anything this year yet, or what? Still too early? The schedule for competing?
I don't have anything in mind.
Okay.
Maybe I won't even compete. Not sure.
You say that now. You'll do something this year. You will not be able to just go 1 year now without competing.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really want to talk about what I'm doing this year because I let the pressures of last year get to me. I was, 40 years in the making trying to get to an Olympia stage, and I blew it. And I let too many people in, and I got distracted a lot.
Okay.
And, I think the next contest that I pick, I'm going to be really under the radar. I'm still recovering from that because it was mentally, it was, you find out the Olympia is coming, and then you got to apply for it, and it was like all these stages, and it was not just a 12-week prep or a 15-week prep. It was like 8 months of just stress, and I didn't like it.
Okay. Welcome back, Billy.
Sorry about that, guys. I haven't used
it. Okay.
So
we don't have to get a GoFund for your internet service, do we?
No, it's just the computer's old.
So, Billy, talk to us a little bit about nutrition. I mean, what do you eat like? I mean, as a strongman, or is there a protocol you follow?
A lot of protein. That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's like it's funny because as a strongman, I hate eating. I absolutely loathe it. Like I'm allowed to eat pretty much whatever I want, although I try to eat on the cleaner side. But it's just I get tired of eating. I just don't like doing it. It's it's one of the most like weird juxtapositions. It's like, oh, you can eat whatever you want. I'm like, I just don't want to eat. It's just like, give me something to drink. Give me something to drink, and I'm good to go. But it's interesting. But a lot of times I do follow a version of the vertical diet, Stan Efferding's, which is pretty much, it's a very bare bones. It's like ground beef, rice, chicken broth, red pepper, spinach. I kind of stick to that a lot when it's competition season. A lot of red meat is usually what I end up eating. But I'm not going to ever turn down a chicken parm, that's for sure.
And how many times a day do you eat?
If I'm getting ready for a comp, it's usually between 4 and 5 whole meals, and then usually 1 or 2 G-code shakes. And for me, that's usually juice mixed in with one of the protein powders, and it's just chug that down with some Fairlife, and I'm good.
Yeah, I think juice is great. Actually, I have it right behind me. And actually, I didn't put that there on purpose. I was there today. I usually don't have his products out, but I like taking the juice and mixing it with rye, drinking that about 20 minutes for a workout, and then I sip on it as I work out. That's how I do it.
I take the old Milos 1990s. I do it intra. So he used to have his guys back in the day. Yeah. He would actually have them, like Sean Ray used to drink cans of Coke. Like that's one of those unsung things. But Sean Ray would sit there with a can of Coke in the middle of a workout and start drinking, and people thought he was crazy. No, they're like, oh, he's all, he's doing that because his metabolism. Like, no, he's doing that for the energy to get through the rest of the workout so he can refuel the muscles quicker.
Yeah, because a regular Coke has how much sugar in it?
Oh my God, 60 something grams.
Right. And it's probably one of the quickest. I remember Mike Quinn?
Yeah.
So I was at a show, I think it was the Junior Nationals in Cincinnati. And yeah, it was in Cincinnati. It was the first time I went light heavyweight. And it was 1997. And I was like a little flat. And Mike was back there. We knew each other a little bit. And he came over and he said, go get yourself a regular Coke and take a handful of potato chips. You'll get a pump. I'm like, what? And I did it, and it worked, like quick, like the quickest thing. So, yeah, I know that little trick.
Because they do, it was Tony Freeman, right? He was at the Arnold. It was probably 2006, 2007.
Okay.
And we had just come, this is when Veterans Memorial was down, the old Vets Stadium, which was amazing downstairs. For watching bodybuilding. Yeah, it was I love the old Vets.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, with that, we would walk everything. It's Columbus. You could walk to everything. So it was a nice day. So we ended up walking and going to Ted's Montana Steakhouse, which is down one of the main, it's right across the street from the arena. And we pulled up in there and we're just like, we're hungry. It's after prejudging. It's like 1, 2 in the afternoon. Here he comes in and he's sitting there and he's housing a burger. I mean, I just saw him on stage looking phenomenal and he's housing a burger, but he has 2 big ass bowls of pickles in front of him and he's just eating pickles. And I didn't realize it till many years later why. It was to rehydrate, but to also fill him back out. That way it would carry him, into the night show a lot easier.
Yep.
Yeah, sodium load him too. Probably the sodium filling him up.
So salt is, I think personally, I'm a huge advocate for salt. I think salt is one of the most underutilized performance enhancers in the world.
100%.
It's gotten so bastardized. There's a great book. If you guys, whoever's listening wants to read it, it's called The Salt Fix by Dr. James Nicolantonio.
Okay.
It is a life-changing book as far as putting to light what has been hidden from most public opinion as far as health goes. So back in the day, he goes into the history of it, but pretty much how the sugar barons paid off the government to make salt the bad guy when it's actually sugar. Sugar was actually the part that makes you sick, that actually makes things hurt, not salt. It's sugar will actually raise your blood pressure faster than salt will. So if you're not actually pre-hypertensive or diagnosed hypertensive, like genetically, your blood pressure goes up by like maybe 1 point, 2 points, and that's it. And most people don't realize that, but the whole book goes into it's an amazing book.
Now, what's the name of the book and the doctor's name again?
Yeah, it's The Salt, SALT Fix by Dr. James Nicolantonio.
Okay.
It's a great read. But Stan Efferding turned me on to that one. He goes, just try a quarter teaspoon of salt before a heavy lift or a good workout. So literally, I walk around now with a little container of salt, and anybody who's like dragging ass, like, oh, I can't get through. I mean, yeah, take this. I gave it to a girl a couple of months ago. She was like dragging ass. It was late in the day. She was doing deadlift. She's a power lifter. Like, yeah, try this. She thought I had 3 heads. I'm like, just try it. It's a quarter teaspoon. What's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing. Just try it. Not even 20 minutes later, here she is picking up 400 pounds for reps going, oh, I guess that worked. I'm like, yeah, it does work.
So now, are you talking about sea salt, regular table salt?
You can use, it could be any salt, honestly. Sea salt works good. I like the table salt because it has iodine in it. Now, another thing that most people don't realize is unless you're eating a lot of shellfish or you have a very, very good broad-based diet, you're not getting enough iodine. Now, your thyroid requires iodine to function properly. Most people, oh, I have thyroid disease. I have this. What's your iodine look like? Is your iodine, because you could actually test it. There was I forgot the doctor's name. She's from Australia. And there's actually, you could buy, the bottles of iodine, for cleaning wounds. If you want to see if you're deficient on iodine, take a little bit and rub it on the inside of your arm, like right at your elbow, and see how long it takes for it to absorb in. So you just put like a little dime-sized drop and you just rub it into your skin. And if you're iodine deficient, that'll disappear.
Now, what is this again? Say it again. Like what is the product?
It's iodine. Regular iodine that's used to clean out a wound. So this is just a test. You don't drink this, but this is how you could test a quick test to see if you're actually iodine deficient. Because some people who struggle with thyroid or they're tired or they're dragging ass, usually means their thyroid's not operating properly. It's not operating because you're not getting enough iodine. So in the cases of iodized sea salt or iodized table salt, that was why it was created, was to get the regular, average person bring their levels up, because not everybody's eating oysters. Not everybody wants to eat oysters, which is a great source of iodine. There's a bunch of different ways you could get it, but iodized table salt is the simplest way. So if you want a little bump, you just take iodized table salt, quarter teaspoon. That's my recommendation for most body weights. Or you start off a little bit lower and you'll see some amazing strength gains real quick.
But now, Billy, do you chase that with a half a gallon of water too to really hydrate, like bringing it together, or no?
You can. Some people, like there's companies like LMNT. They do where it's potassium, sodium, and magnesium together, and it's flavored, so you can do that. It's salt. So I do it just a quick way because I'm used to doing it like what you guys used to do with glutamine and creatine back in the day, which is just a straight scoop right to the mouth with some juice. Like I used to do that with grape juice. I'd read Flex magazine and you have Jay Cutler's like, yeah, I just chase my glutamine with some grape juice. Okay, so that's what I would do. So I do it now, but I just do it with water. I use Rise. Whatever, pretty much any liquid I have that's close. But like the pro strongmen, you got Brian Shaw and Eddie Hall. If you look in their gym bags, like behind the scenes during a comp, they have like the Costco sized salt containers because they take about roughly from pro bodybuilding coach, pro strongman coach. I forgot his name. He's one of the famous. Now he's really well known as a diet coach for almost everybody. So he does NFL players. He does all the strongmen. His name will come to me, but his recommendation is 1,000 milligrams of salt before every event for the pro strongman.
Wow.
So 1,000. It's a lot, but you're talking about a 400-pound guy about to move 1,000 pounds. So it's a little bit different. That's why I'm like, most people, a quarter teaspoon is more than enough. But like for the bigger guys, obviously you need more. But it's nature's natural performance enhancer. It's a great pre-workout. If you can't afford anything else, just literally go take salt packets off of from a restaurant and just use that. But you'll be amazed. It's a great thing. If you ever want to try something fun, you try that first thing in the morning. Soon as you get up, get a nice 16-ounce glass of water, about room temperature, do a quarter teaspoon or less of salt straight and chase it with the whole glass of water. You will wake up faster than any cup of coffee.
I'm going to try that tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love it because it's most people like, I can't. I'm like, yes, it's salt. Yes, it's going to be, that tartness on the tongue and everything else. But you just chase it with enough water. It goes away real quick.
So are you coaching anybody now in Strongman?
Yeah, I coach my 2 nephews because they're both on the amateur side of it. And anybody else who wants to come up and ask questions, I'm always full of advice. I don't care.
How
Because
can
it's like,
people get in touch with you?
they can actually reach me on Unbroken Rhino on Instagram. Actually, I think I have a Facebook too.
Unbroken Rhino on Instagram.
Yep, on Instagram, Facebook too. There's an Unbroken Rhino page also.
And are you getting ready for any future meets this year?
So far, I only have one that's on the books, and that's going to be in Atlantic City. They have the Mr. America at the Clash of the Tridents.
So at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's going to be in October. So
Right.
our the adaptive, North America's strongest adaptive comp is going to be held in conjunction with the Clash of the Tridents down in Atlantic City. So I'll be that I've signed up for, that I'm competing in. I'm going to go for my 4th North America's championship.
Wow.
What was that?
Where is that located?
It's either going to be at Tropicana or at the convention center in Atlantic City. I don't think that the actual final place has been held.
Is that all in October, both events?
Yeah, it's all together. It's the whole weekend. So it's like the Mr. America weekend that they're starting to do.
Gotcha.
Billy, somebody's commenting. Nathan Payton, is that the coach you're
thinking
of?
Yes, Nathan Payton. That's him. Yeah, he's another great resource because he's one of the few people that if you just ask him a quick question, like on Instagram, he'll have like his stories up, ask me anything, and you could just like a quick question, and he'll actually answer most of them. He's a fantastic guy.
So, Billy, we're 2 weeks out from the Arnold. Will you be attending?
This is the first year I might not go. I got some family
stuff. Is back.
First year the cage is back. I've been gone. This would have been my 25th year if I go.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it's still up in the air a little bit, but I got to take a little bit of a break from it. But normally I'm there almost every year. So
Billy, as you wind down, is there anything else that you want to share with the fans, the listeners? I mean, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah. Just keep pushing. That's the best thing I could do. Some people say, "Oh, you're an inspiration. You inspire me." Well, then go use it. That's the first thing I could tell everyone. If you're inspired by me, take that and use it in your life. Don't just say it, actually act on it. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be grandiose. If you're like, hey, I want to try this new thing, go do it. Like adaptive strongman for me was new and I had no experience. I knew nothing. But I got into it. I liked it. It's like anything else. If you want to learn how to paint or you want to learn how to, play a musical instrument, you're never too old. When you say you're too old to learn something new, you might as well just roll over and just stop trying, because that's part of life, is to constantly try to grow, but then it's also to pass it on. And I'm a big advocate of anything that I've gathered and that I can remember and that I can pass on to anyone of any age that's willing to listen. I will sit there and shoot this shit and talk shop for hours.
Awesome.
Love having you on. Thank you so much for sharing everything, man.
Guys, no problem. If there's any time you want me to come back on, I'll always be available. Just let me know. This has been a blast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And everyone, thank you so much for listening, commenting, and make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. On behalf of Vinny and our guest, Billy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Billy.
Guys.